Welcome to the What Drives You podcast. I'm Kevin Miller. I produce this show to help us all continually discover where we want to go and why and how to best get there, all the while enjoying the daily drive as much as the destinations we want to reach. In this episode, we look at how our values fuel our drive and how they often come into friction with today's sociopolitical issues that I feel we're pressured to all have this solid stance on. And I see and have felt the tension that can cause. What we grapple with as individuals, it affects our work and where we work and the corporations that influence and employ so much of the population. So I brought on Patrick Lencioni. He's someone that companies by far and large across America look to for his influence and his guidance. And he is such a highly in demand speaker and the author of 13 best-selling books. He's had over 9 million copies sold. After more than 20 years in print, his classic book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, it remains a fixture on national bestseller lists and within most businesses. His recent book, you probably have heard me talk about, 6 Types of Working Genius, a better way to understand your gifts. And I've widely evangelized this personal kind of a profiling tool. You can go to workinggenius.com and find out where your working genius is. Okay, that's the mastermind of Patrick Lencioni. I've actually had all my family take that test, find it so valuable. Well, here's the deal. Patrick recently wrote a blog titled How to Sow Unity in a Time of Division. And the article is actually aimed at CEOs and the issues that they and employees are facing and the tensions there. But I took it as an opportunity to talk with someone whose insight I greatly respect about values overall and the struggle in our current culture to live them out. Patrick says the world changed with frightening speed in the past 5 years. That change wasn't so much a shift as it was a divide. The emergence of a host of socio-political issues has created a massive rift in culture, one that is unprecedented in the past 50 years. Well, we don't get into politics. We don't really even get into any specific cultural issue. We actually start off talking about his personal move. He's moving right now from California, where he was born and raised, to Nashville, Tennessee, because of some of these actual issues. So we have a conversation about values that Pat actually said, you'll hear it in a minute, is unlike any podcast conversation he's ever had. And I'm grateful for that. My hope is that what you hear helps you consider your values and your stance or not, which I'm going to discuss more of in some coming episodes ahead of us about cultural issues and values. You can find Patrick if you want to connect with him more at thetablegroup.com. And if you type in Patrick Lencioni in your podcast player, you'll find actually 3 different podcasts, real popular ones that he leads. And as you hear us talk about this, you got a question, a comment, a concern, let me know. Email me, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. What drives you becomes your reality. So let's create a better reality for you right here and now. All right, drive with us to consider grappling with values and how to balance social issues. Pat, I am always excited to talk with you. I think this will make the 3rd time of being on the show. And as I talked to you a minute ago about the working genius, man, I've gotten so much value out of that. I have recommended that so often. I actually have a coaching client after this show here, and I have him doing it to see where his predispositions, his propensities, and I'm eager to talk to you right now about some of the predispositions we're seeing in our culture right now. Man, thank you for being back.
Hey, it's great to be here, and we could talk about anything that's fun. I love
anything this. I don't know if this. Well, let's make it fun. Let's make it fun.
Interesting.
So, as I said in the intro, I saw this article that you had written with a corporate focus. And yet what caught me right off the bat is just values, and then the aspect of all these social issues that are happening. And I'll tell you where I've been struggling somewhat and a bit frustrated is there is so much going on out there, and it feels like the pressure is that everyone needs to be fully aware of every issue, fully educated, which feels impossible because not all of us are on the front lines, and we have to have a strong opinion that we stand on. Now you're looking at how that affects corporate America. And of course, the trickle down to some degree affects all of us. It feels somewhat insurmountable. And I end up feeling just kind of impotent with a lot of it. And yet down here, what I do care about is our personal values, whether it's a company's personal values or, well, and mine, and even do those line up? So we're all kind of asking those questions, which makes your topic, it feels like relevant for everyone, whether you're a CEO or not.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's trickling down from the corporate things, or if the corporate things are a reflection of society. And I think it's that second one. I think that we are going through a shift in values that is leaving people wondering where they belong and if they belong. And there's and sometimes we're like frogs in pots of boiling waters. Things start to change and we're not noticing it. But I think if we were to step back 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, and see what's going on right now, it's actually stunning, it's dangerous, and it's disconcerting. But we've gotten used to it day by day by day. But it's tearing companies apart, it's tearing society apart, it's tearing families apart. And there's no getting around it. It needs to be talked about and looked at.
Well, I'm not surprised that you're talking about this. I know you as a person of values. You are clear on your values. You are seeking your, continually talking about and seeking your values. And then people are looking to you to help them steer their ships, whether individually or as a company. Tell me about what you just said, though. You feel like there's a shift in values, because my concern has been, to some degree, out there in the populace, that there's just a decline. I don't know if I should either a decline in values or a decline in awareness of values personally.
Well, let's take an example. Let's start in society. The Olympics, Olympic opening ceremonies. Are you familiar with what happened there?
Some, I don't know. Tell me what you're hitting on.
Okay, so half the world said it was the most inclusive, wonderful opening ceremonies ever. The other half, they used transgender people in risque costumes to reenact the Last Supper. Okay. And then they did some other things like that too. So we live in a society where half the world celebrates that. The other half feels like they were doing something that was unfathomable for thousands of years.
Right.
And so we don't even have a core set of what is acceptable and what's not. We don't even know what's the difference. We really are struggling to understand, is there anything that's good or bad? Does truth exist? Does it not exist? And so, of course, this is permeating companies, but it's permeating society and schools and families. And the Olympics is a great example of that. That offended deeply so many people, and not just Christians, but people who saw how offensive it was to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other people thought, no, this is the best thing ever. So we look at the same thing, and one group says it's fantastic. The other group says that's the worst thing ever. And I don't even know how to have that conversation. Whereas I'm sure 20 years ago, it would have been a very different conversation.
Well, and Pat, and I'll tell you, I do not engage in a lot of media, and it's not from some altruistic, righteous place. To some degree, it's just, I got a huge family and it's just kind of busy. And sometimes I don't get in front of a screen for a long time. So sometimes I don't know, but I hear something like that and I wonder, one, you ask, was that appropriate? But on the other side, I wonder, was it just necessary? This is about an athletic event. What purpose does that have in there? Is that a fair
Well, yeah, but it's being, and this is the thing, and this is what my article says about companies too. So let's say there's company XYZ and they make some product.
Right.
And they had core values that said, we believe in, trust, and we believe in proactivity, and we believe in customer service, whatever it is. And they hired people on that, and they did. Then suddenly they're coming along now and they're advocating things that seem to have nothing to do with their company.
Right.
And they're leaving half the people to say, oh my gosh, that's offensive to me. I guess I don't belong here anymore. And then the other half, and I don't even think it's half, but are like, yeah, we want to do that. And of course, the loudest people, the most demanding people are getting their way. And the other people are wondering, I don't think I belong at this company anymore, because when they hired me, they didn't tell me I had to sign on to this social issue or affirm something that I don't personally believe in. Right. But let me tell you, those employees, and I've spoken to many of them, feel like they're not even allowed to speak up and say, hey, I can't support that. without being ostracized. And so like if you're an Olympic athlete and you go to the opening ceremonies and the Last Supper is being mocked, just mocked in the most risque ways that's so totally counter to your values, and you're thinking, I run the mile or the 1,500 meters, and I'm here to be an athlete. And whether you're Christian or not, you're like, what does this have to do with that?
That was my question right there. Yeah.
And I totally, Kevin, get where you're at. You live up in the mountains, and all of us are like, let's just cut out social media. But the problem is, this is in our companies, in our schools, in our society. And gosh, I love the question, is it virtuous to check out? And I don't think it is anymore.
Well, and that's where I was saying, I'm not doing it from some righteous altruistic. Sometimes it's just that there's just so much time in the day, and I have to make an effort to go into that. But I do, take it from a company standpoint there. So there's a company, I like them, and I buy my Frisbees from this company, whatever. Right. Are they at risk if they say, look, we sell Frisbees, we're going to sell Frisbees. We believe in, good integrity in our business and having fun. And we're really just not going to participate in any of the issues because they don't have to do with our product. Are they at risk of opting out of being involved in commenting on or embracing or not, including or not, these social issues?
Well, see, this is the question. So when we talk about it as a company, well, here's the deal. I'm not saying a company can't take a stand, but if you do have the courage and the integrity to lose your employees and your customers who don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Come right out and say, hey, listen, you joined our company, this Frisbee company, and we hired you because you met these values. But now we are choosing to add more to that. And we expect you to sign on to this social issue. And if you can't, you better be quiet about it, because that's what we are. They should actually be saying to those people, this would be actually kinder if they said, something, if you don't agree with us on these social issues, you should probably not work here because this is who we are now. That would actually be better than saying to them, hey, you're working here, you should just keep it quiet and don't let us, because there's so many employees that work in companies now that are like, if they knew what I believe, they would probably not welcome me here. And so, but the truth is, here's the deal, Kevin. Most of these companies want their cake and eat it too.
That's exactly what I was going to go, because I took that as a big part of your article, because I'm a human. I do too. As much as I can, I'd love to have my cake and eat it too. To do that, I would have to sit here on the mic and never express a personal viewpoint. And if I did that, nobody's going to listen, because you do.
And it's fine for you to express a personal viewpoint. And for the people that work with you and the people that listen to you, you're going to be like, hey, this is what I believe. It's okay to opt out.
Yeah.
But when you gaslight people and say, no, you shouldn't opt out, you should just agree with me. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you, which is what they're saying in most of these companies. They're telling these employees, how could you think anything different than what we're advocating for? And if you do, what is your problem? They should really love people enough and accept people enough to say, hey, and I think the problem, Kevin, is this word inclusivity. All of these companies, most of the companies doing this would say, we're inclusive as long as you agree with us on every social issue that we're taking a stand on. And if they were really honest, they would say, hey, we want to be inclusive, and we're not going to take a stand on things that our good employees wouldn't necessarily agree on, or we are going to draw a line and actually exclude certain people. And that's okay as long as they're upfront about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying you can't take a stand. I'm saying if you do, accept the cost of that and don't gaslight people who disagree with you. I think some of the companies that tout inclusivity are some of the least inclusive of all.
Why?
Because they're saying they're inclusive, but then they pick the issues and they act like everybody has to agree with them.
Yeah.
If they were really inclusive, they would say, hey, whether you agree with issue X or issue Y, we're not going to demand that of you. If you care about our customers, care about our mission, you work hard and you respect other people, there's a place for you here. And so they're like, that would be inclusive. But to say, then you have to sign up for all these other things that we're doing now. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. That to me is terribly, it's not tolerant. It's not inclusive. And they should just say, yeah, we don't mean to be around those issues.
And you just hit on a point that I interest myself with. And it's that aspect of, and I've seen, little posts about it or articles or clips or whatever about, gosh, we can disagree. I mean, I can disagree with you, Pat, and still respect you, still love
Absolutely.
you, still like you, but that's not cultural. I mean, that's a flavor that's out there that if you disagree, you reject and condemn.
Right. Well, and these companies that are driving this are not respectful of people that disagree with them. They demonize people who disagree with them. They say, of course you have to agree with this. And if you don't, then you're a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they don't want them to quit.
Right.
They want them to go there, shut up, and live a quiet and keep their views to themselves. Unless, of course, your views align with theirs, and they'll celebrate you. So the point here is there's a fundamental lack of integrity and respect that's going on, and it's being hidden under this horrible lie of inclusivity. It's not inclusive at all.
It does, coming back to, I still have some questions on that and the corporate world and even from the marketplace standpoint, but just from a personal aspect, coming back to you can't have your cake and eat it too. I don't like conflict, Pat. I admit that I don't like conflict.
And that's a huge problem in our society because we are not having the difficult conversations that people need to have. We're trying to affirm everyone, which of course is impossible. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't love everyone. See, the problem, Kevin, in our society is we think that Jesus said, be nice to your neighbor as yourself. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. And for me to love you, Kevin, even on this podcast, I might need to say to you, that's not a virtue. Avoiding conflict is actually a problem. Uh-huh. Not knowing what's going on in society and staying out of it is not a virtue anymore.
I found that out.
Right.
The hard way. Yeah. But I'd say by nature, I am that. And yet it does feel like we're at a point where, you just, like what you're saying, you kind of have to now. If you're going to state a value, which you have to as a podcast host. So you're talking about this, you're going to be on, I don't know how many other shows. And so people have a choice to go listen to you on that person's show and that guy and that girl and whatever. And they're going to listen to you on my show because they appreciate my perspective.
Right.
If I don't share it, they're not going to listen. I'm just vanilla and who cares? They want to align with their perspective. But for me to do that, I have to repel some people.
Exactly. And you have to be okay with that. You know what I say about in a company, and we're talking about society and family and everything else, but let's talk about within a company just so people understand this. Because we can get, like, if you have a company and you have core values, which means you say, I believe in something. I like to say you should be brutally intolerant of people working at your company who don't share those values. Now, brutally intolerant doesn't mean mean. What it means is if I believe in my company, we have these values: humble, hungry, and smart. That's what to work at our company, you have to be humble, hungry, and smart. And smart is not intellectual, it's social intelligence. We will meet some people that don't meet that criteria. We can love them, but we're not going to hire them.
Right.
Or if we do hire them and then they don't demonstrate those values, we can love them, but we're not going to keep them because they don't fit there. And and a better example might be like at Nordstrom. If it's all about customer service and somebody interviews there or works there and they don't really like customers and they find customers annoying, there's nothing wrong. In fact, there's something very good about saying, hey, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means this is not a good fit for you. And so once we know what those values are, whether it's a family, whether it's a country, whether it's a company, we have to be clear, like, this is what it means to be here.
Yeah.
That's harder to do in a country level. But when we decide we're going to affirm everyone and everything, and this is what happens. I was talking to a flight attendant on a plane the other day, and I said, what happens when people join your company and they don't fit into the culture? They're not good at customer service. And she said, oh, they never get fired. Nobody ever gets fired. Once you get in, you're here. Well, that does not lead to that. There are no values left. Mm-hmm. And that does not lead to a better company, a better society, a better family. It leads to one where nobody knows what they stand for. And I know this sounds like I'm kind of drifting, but what I'm saying is, if you're a company and you declare your core values, stick to those values. and tolerate and love and accept everyone who fits those values, regardless of what else they believe. And when you start to let values creep in that are not your core values, you're going to alienate people and you're going to hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening in society today.
Okay, let's go there, Pat, because I know you as a man of a chosen faith.
Yes.
You're Catholic.
Yes. Christian, Catholic, yes.
Last we talked, you go to mass every day.
I try to go once a week outside of Sunday now. I go twice a week. It's hard to get there every day, but I used to go every day. Life has been kind of crazy.
I remember that because I had Arthur Brooks on the show twice in the past year, and he goes every day, or
wow.
At the time he did. Okay, so in that, it is called faith. It's not called proof.
Right.
And as I look at these issues, for me as a person or a company owner, either way, and to say these are the values that I have chosen to align with, and I am going to request, because it's my company, that the people who work here align with those values too. So we have integrity in our company. But that's different than me saying these are the right values. If you don't line up with them, you are wrong. And I would say that no different from a church pulpit than a CEO room.
Absolutely. And here's the deal. Let's say I have my company is small, and I decide that we do a lot of work it's like a church, let's say, if it was, or we do a lot of work in the Christian world. It's okay to say we're going to hire people that share our faith, but it's not okay to not say that and then demand it and then ostracize the people that don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just about being upfront. And I'm not saying and notice we have not even mentioned a specific social issue yet.
All right.
We have not said one on the left or the right or whatever else it is. But what I need to be is honest with people and say, we're a software company and we're going to sign up for these values and this social issue, which has nothing to do with software, but it doesn't matter. I'm the owner. We're going to do that.
Right.
Fine. But don't invite people into the company and then pull the rug out from under them and say, hey, something's going on in society right now. You have to agree with us on that one too. And that's what's happened. Companies that have been around for 30 years that had employees that felt like, yeah, I belong here. I love this. I love our customers. I love our mission. I'm a great employee. Suddenly they're going, well, do you believe in this? And they're like, well, that violates my religious values. And they're like, well, tough. We're going to celebrate that. And if you don't like it, you better just shut up. That's not okay.
Well, I'm going to come back to, this is right out of your article, Pat, that you said you're either going to, you're going to, placate the loud voices who demand that the company get involved in social issues that are not related to the core mission of the company, and avoid losing a group of employees who wouldn't want to work at a company that doesn't respect their political, social, or religious views. Again, back to the wanting your cake and eating it too. So as you see this shift, I take it that, again, that's a big part of it. We're seeing a shift where you've got to be willing to deal with the pros and cons, the fallout and the connection.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Imagine if a small company decided that the owner was an atheist and he felt so strongly about that, and they made tables for a living, but they said, but we only want atheist employees. That's okay. But know that that's going to limit your ability to hire.
Yeah.
And if that's the culture you want, you should be able to say that. Now, if you're a public company, I think that's different because you have there's thing. And if it's the government, that's different. But a private company could say, hey, we're atheists here. And I think that if you work here, you probably should be atheist too, because we don't like religion and we don't like faith. That's actually an act of kindness to people, because to hire people who are not atheists and then treat them badly because of that there's nothing inclusive and virtuous about that. But you should accept the fact that that's going to limit the people that can work there. It's probably going to limit your market, because when people find that out, that might turn them off. And you should have the courage and the integrity to say, that's okay. I believe in this so much that I'm willing to accept the cost of that.
Yeah. Talk about it then from the employee side, because I know my demographic some, but I'm going to guess there's more employees listening to the show than there are CEOs. So they're hearing that. And you say these employees are left to choose between two bad options when the company doesn't deal with it well. One, they can leave the company in a spirit of rejection, anger, whatever, and I'm afraid that Well, you know the stats better than I do. I would guess number 2 is the more likely option that we see with people with the golden handcuffs. They can stay and quietly endure the pain of violating their values.
Yes.
That is what I hear about more often than not. Sometimes I quit that company. I don't align with them. But I hear a lot more people over here because it's socially acceptable to hate your job that go, I work there and I get my paycheck, but I just, I don't align with those jerks at all. And that's acceptable these days. That's why we have the Dilbert cartoons and, some of these things.
Yeah. And it's one thing when it's bad management, that's human flaw. It's another thing when they're actually taking a stand on something that you find to be offensive and you're told if you want to work here. You see, what it would be better is if the CEO of a company came along and said, hey, everybody, I'm really sorry, but we've made a shift in our culture. And we are now taking on some issues that we didn't hire you for. And so we want you to know that if this no longer is a good fit for you, we are going to help you with dignity transition. We're going to help you find someplace else where you fit because we have essentially pulled a 180. We didn't hire you with this in mind, but now we're changing that. We owe it to you to help you find a place to work where you feel valued and respected. Mm-hmm. See, that would be the thing. But they don't want to do that because they know if every employee that left that disagreed with them, they would be hurt. And they don't want that to happen. They want to be able to take that stand and keep people quiet. And that's where the suffering takes place.
Right.
Again, I think let's use some examples. Imagine that you had pornography is legal. I don't love that. I think pornography is a deadly problem for people. It's an addictive thing. It's terrible for families and relationships and everything. But it's legal. It's legal. Well, imagine hiring somebody at a pornography company. You would say, now it's obviously out there, hey, if you have a problem with pornography, you probably shouldn't work here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But imagine that you just made movies and then you joined there and somebody joined and they were against it and then said, hey, we're going to start making porn. Well, you would know that it would be like, I can't just do that.
Right.
You would say, wow, this is a shift that's probably we're going to lose a bunch of people. And that's how it should work. Well, that's what's going on now in society, that people are saying, well, now we're going to adopt. And I don't care what the issue is. If it's not something you hired them for, then it's cruel to change the landscape underneath them and ask them not to notice.
I'm sitting here thinking, Pat, from a values. So a company having values, having a mission statement. That's not new. I think there's a marketplace or a cultural view on, how much does that really influence the company? Yeah, every company says that, but how much do they actually adhere to those and preach those?
Yeah.
Well, how relevant are they?
Well, this is a great point. Having values that don't mean, we've all been to companies that have a lucite plaque with a bunch of words on it, and you look at it. We
believe in integrity, trust, and just like you said, just the basic ones that everybody says means nothing at this point.
And that's just and that's a mediocre company.
Yeah.
A company that really has values says this will make some people not want to work here and other people want to. This will make some customers want to be here and others not. Like Southwest Airlines, I've worked with them for years. They had sense of humor and it was kind of a quirky, and some people didn't like it. And the CEO wrote a letter to one of them and said, we'll miss you. This is who we are, right. And that's one of their core values. And if you're an employee that doesn't make fun of yourself and doesn't have fun and can't be silly, they say, oh, you probably wouldn't like it here. United might be better or someplace else. That's a good thing. It informs decisions. It informs decisions of customers and employees alike. But when companies have no values, it leaves it open to people not really feeling like, I don't know how to opt in or how to opt out. And it can get really, and those companies don't generally have a culture.
And let's go even to, I work with a lot of small business people.
Yeah.
Solopreneurs,
my favorite companies to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. Small business. Even there though, from a branding standpoint. So I've got a client after this call that we're working on his new business and his brand and stuff. And I am saying, as I was led to say, you need to be out there with your values, with your flavor, if nothing else, with your brand. Otherwise, nobody has anything to grasp onto. And again, I'm sitting here in a podcast seat interviewing you, and you're going to be on God knows how many other shows. And people need to know I listen to this person talk with Pat because I like this person's perspective. So we need to put that out there. And from a company standpoint, if I'm buying a pair of jeans, nobody can convince me they make the best pair of jeans possible. I just don't believe it. Nobody else does either. They can say maybe theirs are a little different or whatnot. At this point, I don't have much else reason to go to, unless I'm just trying to, get a bargain deal and buy my jeans at Walmart or something. Otherwise, I'm going to go buy them, and I'm going to look for some place that does have sustainability as part of their, where are they getting their fabrics and whatnot? Where are the things made and how are they supporting those people? Because I'm going to spend the same $120 or whatever somewhere else. So I'm going to find one that aligns with my values. Why wouldn't I? And there's really at this point, nothing left because I just don't believe that one pair is that dramatically different from the other.
Right. And then see, that's an interesting thing, because when the value has something to do with your business, like we make outdoor gear. So we take a position on environmental things. People go, yeah, that makes sense. Right. But when your company makes shoes and they're making a statement about something that has nothing to do with their market, but their CEO or somebody in HR or some other department convinces everybody that they need to go public around supporting something that has nothing to do with their business.
Yeah.
That is when people go, oh, well, what does that have to do with your business? See, I think there's two kinds of companies, really. There's those that are about their business, their product, and their mission. And then there are those that want to be activists around things that don't have to do with their mission.
Right.
And they have every right in the world to do that, but they don't have a right to lie to people about that, to make their employees feel bad about not agreeing with that, and not being upfront about the fact that some people probably shouldn't work there or buy their goods.
I'm interested, just a curiosity, Pat, as you say that. So let's say I've got a company and I'm selling shoes. And as these days often is the case, if you're a CEO of a popular company, you are a personality. You become a personality. You have followers.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't?
No. The best companies in the world, you don't even know who their CEO is. That's one of the problems with leadership. It's an ego game. I mean, I could ask you, of all the companies that you know of, you wouldn't even know the CEO of most of them if they walked through the door. The ones that you do know are the ones that want to be famous and they want to be an icon, and those are the most dangerous ones.
Well, okay, I'm not gonna push back on that. I'm gonna question that because I'm a little surprised on that, because I'm thinking of with shoes. My first thought were two people: Tom's shoes. Tom was the guy. For every pair of shoes you buy, they give a pair of shoes to underprivileged kids or whatever. And then the other guy, Zappos, the guy there, Tony
Shea.
Yes, them both.
SIEA.
I don't know them personally. I know of their stories, and they both got books. I think we were going to have one of them on the show, and it didn't happen for whatever reason. But those are people there that, well, gosh, I got a different question, but I'm going to come back. You're pushing back against that some?
Well, Tom's is a company that was established for that very reason. So that was their whole brand.
Yeah.
And Tony Shea, we know of because some things now he sold the company and it's run now by somebody else. But when you think about Adidas, Puma, Cole Haan, all these other things, we don't know who their CEO is.
Yeah.
So and we shouldn't know who Zuckerberg is and Bezos and all these other people. The reason why we know who they are is because they want us to know who they are. If they really just relied on, we have a great product, I don't know who the CEO of most companies are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, interesting. Well, okay. Now, given the fact that a lot of CEOs are known, a lot of founders are known, there is an opportunity to say, okay, here I am. I own this company. People know me and I've got a presence and a personality. So here's a company. Let's say I've got an Instagram account. Company has, 1 million followers on Instagram, and I have my own million followers over there. I can have my values. My company has a brand. I'm part of it and whatnot. Now I can decide I want to advocate. I want to be an evangelist. You said an activist for X. Now I can do that myself. It's going to touch the company, but it's not a company. I'm not inserting it into the company. Would you say, keep it separate?
Yeah. And be upfront about that. It's like, if your religious beliefs don't allow you to support this, know this. This company isn't saying that there's anything wrong with you. I am doing this as a human being.
Yeah.
And our company celebrates you regardless of what your faith is or what your belief is. But they're not saying that.
Yeah.
They're not saying that because if you talk to the employees who work there, they're like, no, I know if I said what I believed, I would be ostracized and often fired.
Okay.
And so the problem is they have to have the courage to say, do not think for a second that where I give my money or what I say in my personal life as the founder or the CEO has any indication of your success here. And I don't want our customers, they have a duty to go out to their customers and their employees and say, I am not judging anyone. I'm doing this as a person. But they're not doing that. It's totally infecting their companies. And they're using their companies to do those things. And that's the problem.
Do we I'm trying to think here, as customers, can I put customers and employees? Okay, customers and employees of a company, of a shoe company. There's all these shoe companies out there. Because on one hand, I'm saying we want to know, to some degree, I want to know. It's different than a social issue because a social issue, I want to know if the company maybe is sustainable, if they're, concerned about the environment or whatever, which are social issues, but that really aligns because they are using materials for a product. That's right in line to me, different than them saying, hey, we've gone and decided to support aliens in space. I'm just going to make something benign up, and I'm going, what the heck does that have to do? Do companies feel pressured that we as employees or the marketplace want them to take a stand on those? Like, do they feel it's necessary?
It's a very small group of very noisy people that are driving this.
Okay.
Most employees and customers are like, hey, could you stick to what we do?
Yeah.
Now, if it's egregious, it's terrible. And there's certain things this is where like core values in society matter. But imagine the Olympic Committee saying, should we mock the Last Supper at the Olympics? In most societies, people go, no, that would be terribly inappropriate. And by the way, they wouldn't do it to other religions.
And again, Pat, I did not know. I have to admit, I did not know. And one, appropriate.
You know why you don't know? Because much of the media doesn't cover it if it doesn't fit their narrative. The media companies are the very worst for doing this.
To me, it just is the bigger question. One, is it appropriate? And two, what the heck does that have to do with the Olympics?
But they did it, so you should know about it.
Fair, but that's my question back to them. And what was the purpose of that? What place did that have in there? We could have had somebody come out and do a big advocacy for pets. And I don't have anything against pets, but what does that have to do with the Olympics? This is the Olympics. It's not the pet Olympics.
But the guy that organized it, this is his thing. He wanted to do that. He made it very clear. He said, I want to have the biggest pagan celebration. I want it to be a pagan celebration. He said that. And so the point is, do we go, oh, well, like my kids are like, oh, Dad, I don't want to hear it. Like when they're younger. And it's like, well, this is the society that's happening. And if they did that racially and they made fun of a race, I'd be pissed about that too.
Yeah.
And rightly so. Right.
Let's come back. Yeah. Let's come back to a shoe company.
This is a very hairy, crazy thing.
Well,
and I'm all around us.
Come back to a shoe company. I just got, it was actually
college?
from some.
How about a college? I have a son going away to college and I have another one in college. And
I do too. I have one going to college in a week. Yeah.
Okay. So many of the colleges they go to, we send them there as parents because we think they're there to learn.
Yeah.
And yet they are bombarded with social issues that have nothing to do with their academics. And we know this as parents. We're paying their tuition. Most colleges are doing things that that are just beyond the pale. That's wrong. And you know what the kids are doing? And let me tell you, I've had kids go through high school and college. They will tell me they lie on their tests. They write what the teacher wants to hear socially so they can get good grades. And many of us as parents say, yeah, you just got to do that. The university where we're supposed to be searching for truth and debating and all that thing. And let me tell you, I've had 4 kids now go through this. All of them will tell you that if you want to get good grades, you have to tell the professor what aligns with their political views. Because if you don't, you're going to get punished.
This is such a different topic than I ever have on the show, Pat. This is fun.
I know.
So I'm gonna share something with you also. And yeah, again, some people are going to talk about having your cake or eat it too. Some people are going to be irritated to hear that I'm so ignorant of some of the things going on because I just don't.
Are you not aware of that in the colleges?
Oh yeah, I am. But I'm about to say something different. So I grew up with late night TV. Okay. So my dad, you watch the news and then it's Carson, it's Letterman, then it was Leno. And I knew the stats later on that a lot of people, they find out about the news by watching late night
Yeah.
TV. And the guys are going to poke fun at it. But generally back then, my
Both
memory,
sides.
Pat, both sides. Exactly.
Not
Okay. So
anymore.
there you go. Now I have not had TV since I was a kid, like regular TV, tune in TV. Obviously today you got the internet and whatnot, but I don't watch the news. I don't watch any of the late night stuff. So I'm with my parents this past Christmas time. My dad was actually passing away. And somebody turned on the Colbert Show, that guy. I know who he is. I'd never watched his show. I honestly was blown away by the stance that he took in a 15, 20 minute intro, what I called kind of I'm going to exaggerate it, but kind of a tirade stating specific points that were subjective perspectives, opinions as absolute truth. And I had no idea that in the 30 years since I've been away from late night TV, that it is that one-sided. Now, it maybe shouldn't have surprised me because I know the media is that way, but here's somebody that people are watching. And I thought it's supposed to be commentary or comedy. And it couldn't have been more specifically leaning a direction.
And that's the same in college. It's the same in companies. It's the same. It's like people are, we have to say, stop it. Do your job. You're a comedian. Be funny. You're a college. Teach people to be how to reason and to learn things. You're a company. Make good sneakers and love people and respect people and disagree, but don't make everything about that. But we are now in a society. That's why everyone's moving in our country. People are like, there is a mass migration going on in the United States right now. Like since the Dust Bowl, we've never had this go on. We are going to find in the next 5-10 years that our country is completely bifurcated based on values. People are leaving states and regions. And the number one driver, everybody wants to say it's taxes or it's this or that. It's not, it's values. We are not a nation that shares values anymore. Two people look at something really blatantly stark and they're interpreting it in completely different ways.
Okay, so let's get personal. You're moving. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I'm moving from California. I was born and raised here, and I've lived in central, southern, and northern California my whole life, and we are moving to Tennessee. And it's because there's the joy in California is not here. The things are declining. Everything from customer service to social services to the way people act and treat each other on the street. There's litter, there's crime, there's homelessness, there's economic issues, and there's just a general sense of acceptance like, oh, well, it's got good weather, but everything else is pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that's across and what's happened is at some point, and about 8 years ago, I think this started, people started to say, well, maybe we should leave. And I thought, well, I'm never going to leave. Well, now so many people are leaving that we realize the very people that might want to do something about it are going.
Yeah.
And it is declining very rapidly here. And basically to live in California anymore, you have to subscribe to a certain kind of value system and you have to be super rich to live here and insulate yourself from all the social problems, or you're the working poor and they're suffering and they can't move. And it's really sad. I did a podcast on this yesterday. It's depressing here to watch people go, well, I guess this is the way it's going to be. You drive down the street and there's trash everywhere, weeds, and things aren't kept up. And people just go, well, that's the way it is. Things still haven't opened up. Like services here have still not come back since COVID. Where in other parts of the country, they're like, what?
Yeah.
You go to business and yeah, we don't stay open anymore because, after COVID, we didn't do that. Or we don't have this service. I was at a nice hotel the other day and they go, yeah, we still don't have somebody to park your car.
Wow.
And they're like, everybody's, yeah, it's COVID. And so there's something that's gone on in California. And I grew up and was born and raised here. I love the place, but we're leaving.
Yeah.
And my business is leaving. And so many are. And it's not just the economics. It's the culture of, there's not a joy here. There's not a sense that we're in this together.
What could be, can you see an upside?
Well, the upside is personal and you got to start local. Like Stephen Covey said, your circle of influence.
Yeah.
We all have to influence those around us for good. And what I say is for love. And as a follower of Jesus, we have to love each other more. But the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And we have increasingly a society there, people are kind of indifferent to one another. So I want to be a light in the darkness that loves on other people. And I want to be someplace where other people share that so we can go out into the world and do that.
I want to jump in right there, Pat. It's a great analogy right there as we're thinking, because again, there's people out here. Let's talk the employees right now.
Yeah.
Who are working at companies where they may not align with it. They can take that tact of, well, I think the company's gotten really dark. I'm going to be a light there. Okay. It makes sense. And yet, you know, that sometimes it goes too far and you just can't. It's going to snuff you out if you don't be careful. Now, let's take it to you, because here we are. We can say, gosh, it sounds like you're saying California is kind of getting dark. So here's you, Pat, and your company, the Table Group. You could be a light there. And you're going, I can, but it's just at this point.
We've tried.
Okay.
We've tried.
Okay.
And I was thinking about this, Kevin. And of course, for me, I pray about it and think, what should I do? But I would have to go into full-time social services and ministry to stay here.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm just treading water as the river goes in a certain direction. And at some point, I want to live someplace where my children might choose to live at someday and where they could raise a family. But the things that are going on in California right now basically make it such that we're not. I actually think California, the leaders here and the influencers are glad to see us going. No, truly. Because like, okay, fewer people that are going to slow down the direction we're headed in, you know, because my religious beliefs are not okay here anymore, for instance. I mean, and they're just not. I am not, it's socially unacceptable to believe things I believe, which are biblical. And by the way, that includes loving everyone. I believe in loving everyone, but in love and truth and grace. But it's like, no, if you believe the things I believe here, you know, there's not a place for me in schools.
Let's go right there then, Pat, because you are a guy. I mean, we're here talking about values. You are a guy who I think everyone knows you are a value-driven guy. And that's why you're hired and paid and whatever. So they know that. So you've got your values. Now, we just talked about that. You said Christian Catholic, but you have that's a religious aspect of that. Yeah. Do you? I could see you saying, "Hey, this is what we're about as a company, values." I doubt, and you can correct me, that you're saying, and you have to be of the exact religious faith than I am. You have to eat the same diet that I do and dress as I do. So separate that values, and I don't even know the word values, and some of those choices. They overlap the Venn diagram, but you're not requiring I don't even know how to say that. You get my point. Help me with it.
Absolutely. No, in fact, because you should be able to disagree with people or have different views and still love them and respect them. But once you tell me I can't disagree with them, because see, to disagree with somebody in truth and love is dignity. For me to challenge you, see, like in the Bible, it says iron sharpens iron, and we're supposed to sharpen one another. And when we see somebody doing something we don't think is good for them, I mean, now we don't walk up to a stranger who we disagree with and tell them something. We don't have a relationship with them. But if I'm in a relationship with somebody or I work with somebody and they're doing something that I don't think is good, I can love them enough to share that with them, and they can disagree with me. And that's a great place to be. But in California, it's not, oh no, you do not even dare to have a different view than the predominant thing. California is one of the least inclusive, tolerant states you're going to find.
Yeah.
And yet they say they are, but it's like, ask anybody who disagrees with the prevailing wisdom if they feel comfortable speaking out. And the answer is no. I mean, I love when I disagree with people. They can be any faith, any religion, they can have any beliefs, political views, but there's one way to think here, and that's the way it is. And it's like, that's, when it's time to go.
It does call, again, I'm going to come back to the marketplace and the employees. To work at a place or purchase from a place and criticize it, I think lacks integrity personally as well. Case in point, I have a son who just took a job at a coffee shop, not just any coffee shop, at a Starbucks. I also know he has some issues with, the big corporate giants and what's working there. And we had the discussion. I said, if you're going to work there, then you support Starbucks and do it. I don't want to hear you badmouthing Starbucks because you have chosen to work there, chosen to take that paycheck. So it doesn't mean you align with everything that they do, but if you're going to work there, I sure don't want to hear you criticizing it. That lacks integrity for you. If you don't line up with them, go find another job. There's somebody who you can line up with.
Right. And you can see the problem with that, Kevin, is that let's just say your son feels economically dependent on working there. He needs the job. Then are you saying, so you better learn to like what they stand for? If that's the problem.
No, okay, not like it, but not criticize it at least.
Right. Or should he, and I don't know the answer. Should he speak out and try to change it?
Well, in truth, we live in this little mountain town and there's a glut of coffee shops. My answer would be go get another coffee shop, go work somewhere else.
Right. And the question would be, and so that's what it comes down to is, should you work at a place that aligns with your values? And Starbucks, I don't know. I know a little bit about them, but if they demand that he support things that he doesn't believe in, right, I would say he should not work there.
Right. Like if they forced him to wear a T-shirt at the counter that supported something that he didn't personally. Right. Instead, can he just wear a coffee shirt that says, we have great coffee?
Right. And that's why companies, especially big companies like Starbucks, should be like, if you are a good employee and a good person, you treat other people well. And this is where my views that you love others, love them. Even if you don't agree with them, love them. Then you should be welcomed here.
Yeah.
But what they're saying to Moff now is, and you have to agree with them and you have to affirm all these things and you have to sign up for all these causes that aren't necessarily true to you. That to me is not kind at all.
Well, and I'm back to you. So here's your company, Pat. And if I looked at your list of company values, we have a similar faith. But let's say that I was, I said, man, I see your values. I line up with them 100%. I happen to be, Islamic or Buddhist or whatnot, but I totally share your values. I would think that shouldn't be a problem. Because again, you're not requiring me to be of your chosen faith, to wear a shirt like you do, to eat like you do.
Yes.
Values, can't we separate values from, and I'm still lacking the term. Some of these.
Well, the thing is that you can't completely separate these things. If I'm a church or if I do a lot of work in ministry and we are overtly Buddhist, then you couldn't fault a company for saying, hey, what we do is largely based in Buddhism.
Yeah.
And like, imagine an Islamic church being forced to hire a Catholic person.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
But if you're selling shoes or T-shirts or tables, and especially if you're a public company and you have shareholders and you have you're subject to laws and the stock market, you probably then have to have a more inclusive way of looking at things. Unless your shareholders all believe that we're okay with you limiting your customer base and your employee base to people that agree to this.
And I'm with you on the values. And again, I'm not involved in the corporate world like you are, Pat, and seeing that. But it seems like our values should be able to be pretty, well, not inclusive, but I mean, here's our values and they shouldn't be offensive. These are what we've chosen. If you come and work here, we would want you to do that. Social issues so often feel like they're outside of those issues, which I guess is your point, is they're outside of those values, and yet we're adopting those, and it's causing friction.
Tom's shoes is a great example because we're going to pick a social issue that is not controversial. That's because we don't want to go to one social issue because this could be anything. But Tom's basically said, hey, if you're going to buy Tom's shoes, you pretty much think serving the poor in foreign countries is a good thing. Now, if for some reason, which I can't imagine, but somebody says, hey, I don't really care about that. There's even people who think, well, but what they're doing is, the law of unintended consequences. Some people actually say like Tom's has actually hurt the local shoe markets in those countries.
Right. They're enabling or whatever.
Well, no, even worse. They're sending free shoes to people. And then the local vendors that are making shoes for the local market are displaced. But that's not Tom's intention.
Yeah.
But if a person were to say, I'm not really into, philanthropic things or serving the poor in Africa or other countries, they would go, then I'm not going to buy Tom's. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. So they have taken a stance. It's a very popular stance, and it's a stance I like. But but that's fine. But let's just say that a company started and said, we just want shoes for Muslims or for Catholics, Catholic shoes. Then non-Catholics would be okay going, yeah, that's not for me. And I might not even want to work there. And the people would be like, that's okay. We could still love you, but this is what we're doing. I'm not against people actually having a position. I'm against them having a position and then pretending like everybody else has to be that way too.
Yeah.
And when kids go to college and they should start advertising colleges. I mean, and so many of these colleges, and we've seen this in all of the protests and stuff, they should probably say, if you don't agree with all these things, we're probably not going to protect you here and you're not going to be a good fit. It would be better if they did that. It would be better if they did that.
It brings me that word integrity.
Yeah. It's about just be true and be honest and be open and live with the consequences of that.
You just got me thinking again from a personal values and separating that from these social issues and the pressures that we feel, whether it's a company or as an individual, to make a stance on some of these. I struggle with that just from I don't know how to do what I do as a husband and a father and as a business owner and have time to be fully educated on every issue out there. I got to pick my battles, you know?
Well, and this is why core values matter so much, because all those issues are informed based on your values. So if you say, I believe in these core principles, those core principles then help you with whatever the new issue of the day comes up. You know, and for mine, as a Christian, it's, love God with all my whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love my neighbor as myself for love of God. And everything flows from that. So when I see somebody I disagree with, even somebody who insults me, I have to love them. But loving them isn't telling them what they want to hear necessarily. It might be saying, hey, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's right. I don't think you should do that. I will disagree with you in that. And if I have repercussions because of that, I will accept those. But those inform how I need to deal with these issues. But if you don't have any values, then that's how horrible, horrible things have happened throughout society. And all the dictators of the 20th century came into countries and said, it's me. I am your God, and I will tell you what's right and what's wrong, and that will change, and I will kill you if you don't agree with me. And we're still living in a world where that's possible.
Okay, so let me put you in the seat that you're often in, I think, is so you got 10 CEOs in front of you, okay?
Yeah.
Fortune 500 CEOs in front of you. And you would tell them, yeah, if your company is going to be successful, you should have values. If the Fortune 500 company, you would hope that they have some, that there's something in place already. They've got some.
The largest ones probably don't.
Say it again.
The largest ones are the worst at it because they're trying to be everything to all people, and they're not willing, and they're managing their bottom line like quarter to quarter. And so they don't know. And that's why they've gotten into this problem, because they said, oh, everybody's mad. We have to take a stand on this issue. And they're like, well, that might hurt our profit for the next 3 months. And then they go, oh shit, what have we done? Excuse my French. I've talked to these people and they're like, I feel like I got trapped. They sucked me into the social issue. Now we've put this out there. Now we're kind of screwed. And what are we supposed to do now? Because I think the problem is when you have values, you go, hey, whether the market rewards me for this or not, I'm going to stick to our values.
As a rudder. There's got to be a rudder or an anchor, call it, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. So you've got to have that. Then now what would you guide them to in regard to the social issues? Would you say, yes, I think you're going to be better off to consider them and integrate them to some point, or just try to stay away from them? Where's the balance there?
I would say, first of all, know that if you're going to adopt one of these things, you're essentially changing the values of your company. So realize how serious that is.
Okay.
So if this social issue comes up and you're going to jump on board with that, just know, I'd say, first of all, never do it out of fear because you think people are telling you to, because if you don't, you're going to be ostracized, because that's what happened in the last 5 years. Everybody was like, you have to put something out there. And they're like, but yeah, people will be mad if you don't. And then they do, and they didn't realize what they did. So I'd say, first of all, don't do it out of fear. And if you do it, if you look at your values and you realize you're going to put something new out there, understand the consequences of that, both on the employees who work here that are going to feel alienated, and on people in the market that are going to feel alienated too. And be upfront about that and welcome the consequences of that. Have the courage and the integrity to welcome the consequences of that. Or have the prudence to realize this isn't who we are.
Yeah.
And we are not going to demand that people have to line up with something that has nothing to do with our business. I'm not saying don't do it. But most times, I think companies are like, this isn't something that
I'm asking point blank, what would you recommend? Would you say you don't? I mean, because as an owner, I could even say, hey guys, I know that this is an issue that's out there and it matters to our culture. As a company, we are not necessarily going to take a stance on that. We're sensitive to it, but we're just not. Is that a valid?
Well, and yeah, I love that, what you just said. And I would say, yeah, we're going to do that because there are reasonable and good people here in our company that don't necessarily agree. And there are reasonable and good customers out there who don't necessarily agree. And we honor them because you don't have to agree with us on this. The problem is, if you really talk to those CEOs behind closed doors and you said, do you really think your employees who aren't supportive of this are bad? I mean, I asked an executive at a very iconic company in America, I said, could your employees that agree with this issue come out and say so publicly? They said, yeah. And I said, could your employees that disagree do that? And they were like, oh, no, they couldn't. They would never feel comfortable saying, hey, I don't agree with this.
Yeah.
And they were like, what did we do? How did we do that? And they got pressured into it by people who said, everybody agrees. And they don't agree. The loudest ones won the day. And now a lot of these companies are trapped.
It's so hard not to go into some of the specific issues.
I know it. And I purposely don't do it because I don't want somebody to be able, it's about integrity. It's not about any one particular issue. I would be glad to put it out there with somebody and say, well, what about this issue? Do you really think that that everybody has to see this issue the same way? And I'd be glad to take one from the left and one from the right because I'd argue it the same way.
Yeah.
Now, and so I don't want people to be able to go, oh, that argument is just because of this issue. It's not. It's about integrity. And it's about love. It's like if you love somebody, you will engage with them and you will feel comfortable sharing a dissenting opinion and still love them through it. We don't live in a society that does that anymore. You know, Kevin, I think the worst thing in our society is this. We don't know how to have difficult conversations anymore.
Agreed. And that's been, it's been a struggle of mine historically that I'm working on. But one of the things, one of the things that seems to make that issue even harder today is because I do feel like there's a social flavor of the disagreement is cashed in right or wrong, as opposed to this is my choice and my chosen faith that I'm going to go forward in, as opposed to right or wrong. And
we're meant to listen to one another and influence each other.
Yeah.
You know, and without, what I find is this, Kevin, people will take a public stand on a street corner with a mask on, or they'll flame somebody on the internet and they'll troll people. But what they wouldn't do is sit in that coffee shop where your son works and sit down and go, hey, can I share with you how I feel about that? I'd love to know what you feel. People don't do that.
Yeah.
Good societies, people do that, and then they learn from each other. But what we have in our society is like mean, anonymous conflict, but not person-to-person conflict. And we've talked about this in companies for years. The very best companies argue well. The leaders do. Well, the very best families, people argue well. And the very best societies, people do. When I was a kid, we used to go to my cousin's house and stand in the kitchen. And there would be a debate between the kids and the adults, and it was great, and we'd wrestle with things. And we loved each other. People cannot disagree and love each other anymore. It's a really terrible thing.
Is that the opportunity then, as a leader, whether you're talking about a CEO, a parent, a pastor, a social group, an affinity group, whatever, as a leader, influencer in there, to advocate for that, to take affirmative action for that, to say, hey, let's make a place to talk about these things, but we're gonna have some guidelines. This is not right or wrong. Disagreeing is not volatile, whatever. This is to understand each other. Let's make a place to discuss that, even within a company like that. Can we have that opportunity?
Absolutely. Now, do you know though, and this is where, gosh, this conversation, I've never had a conversation like this on a podcast, Kevin. So this will be very interesting, but this is where what's underneath all this is trust. And the word trust and truth are rooted in, if we don't believe that there is a truth that we're all pursuing, that we all want something that's true, If we only want to be confirmed in what we believe, if we're not willing to wrestle with others in the pursuit of truth, then there's no reason to talk. Like if my wife and I are arguing about where to send my son to college, or if he should have a job, or how we should raise him, right? If I don't think that we're pursuing the same good, but she just wants to win the argument and I want to win the argument, that's never going to be a good situation. If we're really committed to what is best, then we can do that. But if people get into a discussion like on TV, and all they're I'm going to say anything that supports my stand, and you're going to say anything, then and nobody ever goes, oh gosh, I hadn't considered that. Oh my gosh, that's a really good point. Oh, have you considered this? If we're not actually pursuing what's true, good, and beautiful, then there's no platform, there's no trust within which to have this conversation. And my biggest concern, Kevin, this whole conversation wraps around this. I think people are offended by the idea that there is truth and that we all want to know what it is. I've had two people I was in conversations with cry. I was shocked because we weren't even talking about the issue. We were just talking about whether truth exists. And it was so, I heard somebody once say, oh, don't use that word truth. Those are fighting words. And it's not that we have to agree on what the truth is. We just have to agree that we're all pursuing it. Because at the end of the day, something's true and good. And we don't even have to be in the same place. But it's like, oh, I see. So that's where you are and that's where I am. Okay, well, let's keep talking at some point. But now what people are saying is like using the word truth. That's like a 4-letter word now.
It is. And yet that's what we see. If I click on the news channel or social media right now, that's what I'm going to see is people arguing vehemently their perspective on what is truth. And it's going to be right or wrong. And if you disagree, it's you're evil.
Right. Well, the funny thing is we can disagree on what we believe the truth is, but that doesn't change the truth, right? I mean, it's kind of like, I like to use the example of like John F. Kennedy. It's like somebody killed John F. Kennedy, right? Was it the mafia? Was it the CIA? Was it the Cubans? Was it a lone gunman? I don't know the answer. Will we ever know? I don't know. But there is truth, right?
Somewhere, yeah.
Something is true.
Yeah.
And that's true whether it's God we're talking about, whether that's true about moral issues. That doesn't mean we're all going to get to the same place at the same time, but can we at least talk about it and try to and say, yeah, we all want to know the truth. But see, the problem is when people don't really want to know the truth, they just want to know what's going to be good for them. That doesn't leave us with an ability to have disagreement. You
really, Pat, at this point, I'm thinking about, trust. Again, whether you're leading a company or a family or a social group or a church or whatever it is, that this is nothing new under the sun. And we're back to, is there anything more valuable than building trust in your organization? You do that, you probably aren't going to go wrong which way you go.
Yeah. And trust is through vulnerability. And one of the key things about trust is that people can actually say, oh gosh, I was wrong. Or I didn't know that. Or I think I need help. Or wow, I'd like to know more about what you think. That's vulnerability. That's saying I don't have all the answers. I'm not always right. I'm not always even kind. Saying I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was rude to you. When people can do that, when they can be vulnerable, that establishes grounds for trust.
Yeah.
But if people go into an argument and they say, or even a relationship and they say, I'm not going to be wrong. I'm not going to admit if I'm wrong. I'm not going to learn anything from you. And I'm not going to change anything about what I believe based on what you say. That's a pointless conversation. Gosh, there was one other thing I wanted to say because you said it just now about trust. It's about, do I believe the other people? Oh yeah. So I'm going to take an issue. Let's take here's a fun one because it's popular right now and it's not that controversial, but it kind of is. Electric cars. All right.
Right. Okay.
So everybody, good one.
Yeah.
Electric cars. Are they good or are they not good? Well, first of all, it shouldn't be a moral thing, right? Or moral in one, it's not a religious thing. And when you talk to people about it, it's like, we should be looking at, okay, what is the true cost to the environment of an electric car?
Yeah.
And where does a lithium battery come from? And what are the people that are mining that stuff in Africa going through? And ultimately, how do you dispose of this stuff? And so what is the long-term? That should be based on information. What is truly best for society, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you talk to some people and they're like, no, I'm for electric cars because I'm this. And somebody else, no, I'm against electric cars because it's like, well, let's just put all the information on the table and have a conversation. And maybe we'll come to the conclusion that they're bad actually, or, oh, but they actually really are good. Why? But what we do is we go, I have to win this argument rather than, I mean, COVID was like that too. COVID was horrible because and things are coming out now about COVID, like, okay, was this the right policy? Was that? And people are like entrenched.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, we should go, let's take a look at this and really discover why we did what we did, what happened, what's the reality now, what do we know? But we can't talk about even those kinds of things. Everything becomes a...
Let's use that, because electric cars, who listening here is on the front lines of the automobile industry and electric cars and non-electric, and really, really knows from firsthand experience. Probably nobody listening to this show, maybe one guy, one gal. Nobody knows. And so what do? We go listen to people who we do trust, some podcast, you who like me, right, and hear his perspective. And then we go off and spout that and take our stance on that. And that's what's dangerous to me. That is uninformed. That is taking somebody that you trust and making a statement, where I'm finding myself in a place of to be honest, I'm not that informed. I'm not that informed on X to give you my stalwart opinion. I'm so sorry. Maybe that lessens your respect of me, but it's just true.
But the question is this: are you open to learning?
Yes.
And I am too. I don't know the answer to this. I don't. For all I know, you have 3 Teslas or I have 3 Teslas. I don't know. Yeah. But the point is this: I kind of want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. And I want to look at all of it, because I think all of us benefit when we look at it with an open heart and open mind. But I don't see a lot of that in society anymore.
I just want to, I want to pull that out. You mentioned COVID. So my best friend, who my studio is in it's a medical practice. My best friend, Randy, he's an MD, functional medicine expert. And so of course his patients are coming to him going, should I get vaccinated? And he's supposed to know. And he's going, dude, I'm a doctor. I live up here. I'm not on the front lines. So he's going to the people he trusts who are theoretically on the front lines. And it was really difficult for him, Pat, because he said, I got somebody here I trust who says, absolutely, you need to get vaccinated. And somebody over here going, absolutely not. And he's supposed to tell his patients the truth.
And you know what I look at in society is when any opinion is censored, that's the danger.
Yeah.
And there were people on both sides of that issue. But let me tell you, one side was people lost their medical licenses and got kicked off of social media for having one opinion. I couldn't believe that I lived in a society where people were actually penalized, like researchers, for sharing their research.
Yeah.
And do I know the answer? No, but I know this. Usually when one side is being censored, there's something. The desire to censor opinions is usually not based in truth. It's usually based in having to defend something that they're not comfortable
right. That's exactly where I was going to go. That's the caution that I feel, Pat.
Right.
And ultimately, when this thing blows up, we are not even going to hear from the people on the front lines. We're going to hear from the hired guns. They're like lawyers, and they're being paid to win. It has nothing to do. We left truth a long time ago.
I do know this. Doctors who weren't for COVID vaccine were told they had to shut up, and they were told and they were threatened. Doctors that were for the COVID vaccine were allowed to speak out. I just think that, shouldn't we just hear from everybody and then make decisions? Mm-hmm. So whenever one side gets censored, I always think there's a reason to do that. Because if we're looking for the truth, we should celebrate all the information we can get.
Yeah. It's a great story, because I should go back there. How long was that? 3 years ago or whatever? Because I'm looking to Randy too, going, dude, what should I do? Should we get vaccinated or not? And ultimately one day he says, you know what? I'm running out of more reasons not to than I am to. And so we went, he and myself, another guy, and we got a vaccination. Now, whatever it is, 3 years later, he's looking back going, I kind of regret that. I don't know that I would.
And you know something? I love this. I love when a person can say, hey, I did this for this reason and now I regret it. That's vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because it's saying, hey, maybe I was wrong. But if you got it and now you're like, now I have to convince that people are evil that didn't get it.
Yes.
That's terrible.
Confirmation bias. Yeah.
And that's what happens in our society. I have some good friends that were like, yeah, I supported it, and now I wish I hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we struggled. My son had some signs of myocarditis, and he was 18, and all the information said a kid that age shouldn't get. I still believe that he shouldn't have gotten it, and he didn't. But his pediatrician was going to force him to get it in order to go to college. He wasn't going to give him a permission.
Yeah.
And I lost respect for the pediatrician because he had been, and to this day, he hasn't said, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Because now we know that young kids, I mean, now all the science has come out and said, yeah, young kids didn't need to get it. They weren't spreaders of it. It does have risk factors. Almost no doctor will tell you that an 18-year-old needed to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
And yet I love when people go, hey, maybe I was wrong. And I'm sorry.
Which I come back to trust, which on the front end, Pat, I'm literally living this out now, trying to express when I'm asked to give an opinion, to do whatever, to say, look, to the best I can figure out this far, from my personal experience, from everything I've looked at and researched, I'm going to err on this side and make a decision, because I do have to get up and decide which direction I'm going to walk. I'm going to do that, but it's based on that. It is, I can't prove it to you. I can't say it's fact. I'm looking for the truth, and I'm veering this direction for it.
And if I judge you for getting the vaccine or not getting the vaccine when all you were doing is trying your best, that's not love.
Yeah.
Now I can disagree with you or agree with you, but we need to get back into a place where we're pursuing truth together in love, without fear of disagreement. And that's where love and respect and a good society comes from.
Seeking truth. I appreciate your perspective about seeking the truth, but without having it unequivocally, irrefutably proven that I'm going to step towards what I feel that it is in faith. Exactly. That is not offensive. That's not threatening.
Right. And we should be doing that in companies too. We should be doing it in families. It's okay that we disagree, but can we acknowledge that if I present you with some information that you might say, oh gosh, I hadn't thought of that. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening in companies. That's not what's happening in universities. It's not what's happening in society. People are saying, I don't want a contrary opinion. I don't want to consider any more information. I've made my decision. And that's bad.
Pat, it does feel, I mean, again, you came at this initially from a corporate view, but corporate and culturally, it grieves me that it does feel like companies, the population, and even down to individuals, there's a cultural pressure, again, to take a stand on every issue. And it just doesn't feel tenable.
Right. Wouldn't it be great if people said, what do you think about this? And say, I don't know everything, and I'm not saying I'm finished on this, but based on what I know now, here's what I believe, but I'd love to hear what you have to say, because maybe you'll convince me otherwise, or I'll convince you otherwise. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
I mean, that sentence right there would be a beautiful thing in every boardroom, in every family, in every university, in every newsroom.
Yeah.
And it's not happening.
It's not happening. Even like you talked about the electric cars. And if you ask me, Kevin, what's your opinion? I go, well, I have heard a lot of criticism on both sides. And it seems like even more so lately on the electric cars. It makes me have a little concern. I'm not going to run out and buy one right now based on what I know. But if I was thinking that I might, or then if I have a sponsor, that would be it. If my next sponsor is Tesla and they're saying, Kevin, where are you saying? Well, I'm going to have to go learn some more. I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And be open to what is good and true and beautiful.
Yes. Yes. Pat, it's just, we should do this every week.
I know if we lived, I decided God didn't let me live close to the people I like to do this with, because I'd be in their house having a beer and my wife would say, where are you? I'm at Kevin's again. We're having this great talk. So he spread out all these people. I get to be on their podcast, visit them sometimes, but none of them live on my street. So
it is. Speaking of podcasts, I'll let everybody know about, well, you actually tell us where to tune in, because you've got two podcasts right now.
Yeah. One is called At the Table, which is basically where we just talk about anything related to the world of organizations. We did one yesterday that'll come out next week about mediocrity and the true cost of mediocrity in society.
Yeah.
And then we have one called the Working Genius Podcast, which is just all for working genius junkies. That one's growing like crazy for people to talk about that. I also have a daily 3-minute podcast that I do with a guy named Chris Stefanik from Colorado, and it's called the 3-Minute Reset. And it's a devotional. It's like every day we talk, it's professionals that want to do 3 minutes about Jesus.
That's the one I knew about. I didn't even know about the Working Genius.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we have a Working Genius podcast.
Well, thanks, because I'm a Working Genius nerd.
Yeah.
Which is why the book's standing behind me here. I'm a fan. Yeah, and I'll put that in the intro. I am such a fan. I've had all my family members take it. I've had my coaching members take it. It is one of my favorite. I don't even put it in the, I guess, you put it in a personality profile segment. I don't even necessarily say it with that. I'm talking about you. When you don't know your propensities for work that is fulfilling to you, go take the Working Genius.
Yeah, it's not like, because I love Myers-Briggs and DISC and all those other things, but this one's different. This is like, it's like so tangible. Like, what do you do and love to do every day?
Yeah.
So,
yep.
It's different.
Mine's Wander, by the way. Wander and invention. That's all I want to be.
Oh my gosh. That's my wife.
Okay.
And she is like, and you live up in ideation. You're thinking about things and asking questions. That's why you're curious.
I'm curious, and then I want to build a framework to address it, and then I'm kind of done.
Right. And landing the plane isn't so, it's like,
once tenacity was my last.
Right, yeah. Right. That's great. So this makes sense that you do this. This is great.
Which is why it's so hard to end a podcast. I don't end anything. It just kind of keeps going, but I guess we have to.
Right.
Pat, thank you so much. I feel confident in myself when the thing came across the board. They said, yeah, Pat said something or other. I said, I don't care. Just have him on the show. Yes. So thank you. It's a joy. It inspires me. You give me things to ponder, and I'm so eager to share this with my audience. I've been asking my audience in pretty much every podcast these days to engage with me. You got a question, a thought, an idea, a concern, email me at kmiller@kevinmiller.co. And they are, and I'm getting to engage with them on the topics. This is likely to bring up some questions. And if they give me one that I don't know, I'll email you and ask you.
That sounds great. And I hope it's been edifying or helpful or provocative in a good way and open for your audience. I hope that they find this to be
they positive. Will, because tell me your company values: hungry, humble, and what was it?
And emotionally smart.
Okay, there you go. Because I think they'll find that. I know they will. That's what I experienced from you, Pat. Thank you.
You know something, Kevin? We added a new value. We took this 2 years ago, and that is peacefully courageous.
Wow. Because
of what's going on in society, we said we have to be humble, not ego. It's not about us. Hungry, we got to work hard. Emotionally intelligent. We also have to have a peaceful sense of courage, because saying the good stuff is going to be costly at times, and we have to be okay with that.
Thank you. It's good for me to hear. I need to hear that.
Yeah.
Pat, Thank you. Such a gift.
God bless you, buddy.
Friends, thanks so much for joining me on this journey, this drive. That again is Patrick Lencioni. You can find him at thetablegroup.com, but also encourage you to type in Patrick Lencioni in your podcast player, and you'll find 3 podcasts that he puts out that are just, again, very, very popular and well-known podcast. As I continue to say, if you heard something that you're curious about, got a question about, that you're frustrated about, let me know. Let's talk. kmiller@kevinmiller.co is my email address. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further and enjoy the ride. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. I look forward to meeting you in the Drive Tribe community for ongoing discussions about each episode. You can subscribe to the Drive Drop newsletter for weekly updates. Find it all at kevinmiller.co, along with all our social media and video clips. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further and enjoy the ride.